Welcome to the Landing Zone podcast. Real veterans, real stories, unscripted and unedited. And Happy New Year and wishing everybody a healthy and safe 2025. And today we have Lisa Rosser, the founder and CEO of The Value of a Veteran and also an Army veteran. Welcome to the podcast, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Lloyd. I'm so excited for this opportunity.
Yeah, and we're here to hear Lisa's story for sure, but we also want to hear about a great event that's getting ready to come up at UPS. It's a Veteran Recruiting Conference 25. But before we get into that, Lisa, where are you originally from?
I'm from the greater Washington, D.C. area, Northern Virginia. Specifically, I grew up in Alexandria and now live out in Herndon near Dulles Airport. So I'm one of those rare Northern Virginia natives.
I got to spend some time. UPS used to have our government office out by Herndon. And if I remember right, you're a Washington Commanders fan.
Oh, absolutely.
So you had a good week last week?
We did, and I'm having a lot of fun because I've got some friends who are Detroit Lions fans, and so it's like, if the Commanders were not playing, I would be 100% cheering you guys on. That's not happening this week.
Well, I'm a Kansas City Chief fan, so I've had definitely some good years here lately, but I suffered for a long time as well. Mm-hmm. So just like the Lions and Commanders have, so it's neat to see those two teams come up. So U.S. Army, a veteran, retired lieutenant colonel. So yeah. Why'd you join the Army?
It's interesting because my father served and he retired after like 20, almost 30 years. And I had two siblings who served, but none of them served while I was alive. So I never, got to move around or be kind of more the typical dependent in the family. But he retired in the Northern Virginia area. We grew up in Alexandria. And so I was always on military bases. I lived right next to what used to be Cameron Station military base in Alexandria. So I knew of the military, and I was always very just impressed with, what I would see the soldiers marching around on the base, and it was very appealing to me. And then I want to say when I was a teenager, there was a made-for-TV movie that came out about the first women to go through West Point and some of the challenges that they had being accepted and things like that. And to me, that was actually appealing because I'm like, give me a challenge, tell me I can't do something, and then watch me go do it. So I initially thought I was actually going to go to West Point. But in high school, somebody introduced me to ROTC. And after they explained it, I was like, oh, so I can get the same commission and I can still be in the military, still get the college paid for, but I can party? Okay, well, then I think that sounds like a much better deal to me. So yeah, I needed money for college, so that was kind of the biggest piece of it. But also, it was appealing to me regardless. So Army was the pick because I don't swim, so I didn't want to have to go through that with the Navy or the Marine Corps. But Marines would have been my second choice, but Army I think was the right choice for me.
Outstanding. And what did you do in the Army?
So I was a telecommunications officer for the first half of my career. So satellites, radios, telephones. We were the Verizon in the field, if you will, and did a lot of deployments, providing a lot of service to different organizations as they were in Desert Storm and Somalia and Bosnia and all that kind of stuff. After the first 10 years, though, of constantly deploying, I was like, man, I'm getting a little tired here. And I was the guy I was dating at the time. We were talking about getting married. So I thought if I'm going to get married and eventually have a family, perhaps I shouldn't be running all over the world. So I decided to step down from active duty, and I still wanted to continue and get a retirement. So I joined the reserves and went and found a position as a consultant with Accenture.
Yeah, great. And I was a communications squadron, a first sergeant for 3 years. We had chatted before about it, and I really enjoyed it. It was mm-hmm. very diverse organization in career fields than what I had in being an enlisted aviator, and definitely my troops were smart. They mm-hmm. still got in trouble, but a lot of them got in smart trouble. So,
right.
so I love that. And then if I remember right from reading your LinkedIn, you became an HR specialist.
I did. So once I transitioned over to the reserves, my last job on active duty was at Forces Command headquarters, Army Forces Command headquarters, which at the time was in Atlanta. So I was, probably the most junior officer working in that building as a captain, and then ultimately promoted to major. But it turns out there was an augmentation unit specifically for that headquarters that would stand up and supplement the staff there in times of war. Well, guess what? About 2 years later, 9/11 happened, and here I am right back on active duty as a mobilized reservist. So I did that for about 2.5 years. So I have a lot of points for a reservist who ultimately did retire from the reserves. But then the rest of the time as a reservist, I kind of moved over into the HR field, and then, sending individuals to war, basically, identifying the purple squirrel, that the left-handed thoracic surgeon that needs to go into the theater, helping identify those folks and moving them out. And then I had an opportunity to come back to Northern Virginia with Accenture. So it's like, okay, I'm going to work on an Army contract, and it was something on their HR systems. I was very passionate about that topic. I wanted to see the Army function for a change in its HR systems. So I found a reserve unit up here, and my last job was as an instructor. So teaching the majors basically what their next level of responsibility is going to be, and all the things that they need to worry about as a senior, kind of staff officer. So that I did that for about 7 years. So that was rewarding in its sense, but when the time came, it's like, oh, tick tock, time to retire. Let's go.
And I love your entrepreneur story. How you started the value of a veteran. You were doing really well with Accenture, but you had a calling to the serve and work in veterans in that space, just like I do. Can you walk us through on the small beginnings of an idea, and how you eventually cut yourself out of working for big industry, yeah, exactly, and working for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was actually my second entrepreneurial venture. When I first left active duty and joined the reserves, before I joined Accenture, I did go out on my own. I wanted to start a retail business. So I did do that for a year. It did ultimately not succeed. And so I never lost the bug, though, to work for myself. I really enjoyed that piece of it. But I said that if I'm ever going to start another business, I'm going to sell my knowledge and not a physical product where I need a building and staff and all this other kind of stuff. But I didn't know what that knowledge was. It's like, what do I know better than other people do, that I could make money selling that information. But I figured it would come to me eventually. And so as a consultant with Accenture, I learned everything I know about consulting, from how they do it. And it turns out it was a natural fit for me. I wasn't sure initially that, do I know how to be a consultant? And it turns out I knew everything except how to price because we never have to do that in the military. And I had to learn how to price services. So I'm really good at that now. But so that's what, the biggest part of it. And how do you provide the right service, and how do you keep things in scope? And, if you hear things are starting to go out of scope, how do you very gently, reel the client back in and let them know we can expand, but we need to rewrite the contract. So all of that, came to clear to me. So how I ended up actually starting the Value of a Veteran, though, right about 2007 timeframe, I started to kind of really feel the pull to do something entrepreneurial again. And I figured, okay, since I'm really enjoying being a consultant, I think it's going to be in the consulting space. But what is it again that I know that other people don't know? And I thought it's either going to be something about women or something about veterans, because I feel like I know both of those topics pretty well in terms of workforce. Because that's what I was doing. That was the type of consultant I was at Accenture. We called it the human capital space. So you have to know communications and training and change management, but you also need to know the diversity space and how workforce works with different organizations, and how you bring talent in and keep talent and all that kind of stuff. So I knew I loved that. And I knew I loved, the topic of women or veterans in the workforce. And it was funny because someone who was advising me on, kind of which direction to take. And she's like, women are cheap. And I was like, well, veterans are cheap. Veterans are,
We are.
expect
We want free
free.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody wants something for free, and the government gives it to them for free, and the nonprofits give it to them for free. I said, so what am I doing? And she's like, well, then who would pay for your advice? And it occurred to me that employers might pay for this advice, because at the time, the unemployment rate was in the double digits for veterans. We had all the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans coming back. And there was a lot of media attention around how do we help these service members get to employment when they come back from Iraq and Afghanistan. But then the next sentences would always be like, but they don't have college degrees, and they don't have marketable skills, and they don't, they have illnesses and injuries, visible or invisible. And so already the limitations were coming in, and it's like, that's not the service members I know. That's not the military I've served in. So I really saw a gap. Where employers want to do the right thing, and that's good, and they always have talent challenges. It's always the number one or number two thing on the mind of the CEO is their talent. So it's like, I think I've got a niche here where I can just focus on one category, and I chose veterans. I said I want to be able to talk to employers, help them see the business value of bringing in this kind of talent. Not that it's a DE&I checklist, not that it's the patriotic thing to do. It's like, no, you have talent problems, and we can help you solve some of that because of the unique way that the military is structured, how we get trained, the fact that we have relocation benefits, the fact that there's tax credits, the fact that all these different programs like SkillBridge and the Department of Veterans Affairs programs that can actually, help employers financially be able to make an easier decision to go this direction. And it's like, okay, I understand it because I live this life. I understand all the things that they're talking about. I understand human capital. I understand recruiting. And I also understand change management and how to affect people to get them to make better choices. So I thought, okay, I think I'm onto something. So I started with, I was in the National Speakers Association at the time, trying to kind of build out what this thing is going to be. And someone came in one day and talked about, writing a tip guide or a tip PDF, give people enough information to be dangerous, and then they have to come to you to get the rest of the information. And it's like, that clicked. I was initially thinking I needed to write a book.
Yeah.
And I had been collecting all this data, and I'm going to write a book, and here's all the things I'm going to write about veteran talent. And then when she talked about the tip guide, and I looked at what I had already written, and I was like, oh, the guide is written. The guide is done. I literally just need to tighten this up a little bit, and I have a product I can put out into the world. So I did. I put it out on LinkedIn, and it was 76 tips for developing a veteran talent program. And LinkedIn is where all the recruiters are. So they really glommed onto it. They were just like, oh my God, I have never seen information presented this way before. And I was like, oh, good. I'm hitting on something here. And they're like, do you have any training? Because, now we realize we don't know how to do some of this stuff, and we don't know what these programs are. We don't know which program's the right program to take. We recognize we don't know how to read the resumes, so they started to realize all the things that they didn't know, but that someone could explain it to them and help them structure it. And I was like, that's me. So I created training, and then by that point, it's like, I need to make a decision. Am I going to keep trying to do this on the side, which was becoming increasingly difficult, or am I just going to leave Accenture? In the middle of a recession, by the way, 2008. Am I just going to walk away from a great job that pays me well and pays me every 2 weeks and gives me healthcare benefits to strike out on my own? And one of the things we learn in the world of entrepreneur and business is like, you have to burn the ship. Because if you leave the ship there, you always like, I could always go back. I could, I don't have to do risky things because it's too hard, and I can always go back to what I was doing. And it's like, no, if you burn the ship, not literally burn a bridge or anything, but like, don't give yourself a reason to be able to go back. Force yourself to be able to do hard things and figure it out. And that's actually one of the things the military taught me was, you didn't know how to do this before the military gave you some training and then threw you into the fire and said, figure it out. Nobody knew how to fix a tank before they came into the military, but now you know how to fix a tank because you had mechanical aptitude and we taught you how to fix a tank. And I said, so I've been, I had to keep reminding myself, you have been placed in many, many situations in the military where you didn't exactly know how to do something, but you knew enough to kind of put a framework together to go out. You knew you had good people with you who will help you figure out what to do. And maybe they've got a little more experience here, there, or the other, that will help you. And then if you make mistakes, you have to just trust that you'll survive whatever the consequences are of the mistakes that you made. And then you won't make that mistake again. And so that, I 100%, if I had not served in the military, I don't know that I would have known that and had trusted in that, to be able to do my own business.
Oh, great. That's amazing. So let's talk about the conference. So this is going to be the 13th annual Veteran Recruiting Conference.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so this veteran recruiting conference, 13th one, I decided a couple years into, once we got through the recession, 2008 to like 2010, 2011, I started to think about all the clients and the prospects that I talked to. And I said, and there were a lot of companies that wanted this kind of assistance, but there were also a lot of companies that are like, no, we know what we're doing. We're good. We don't, there's nothing you can teach us kind of attitude. And I was like, first, that makes you a little upset. And then I started to think, okay, well, how can I leverage that? Then it's like, if you know everything, then you need to share that information with all of these other companies, because it's not, they should hear from more than just me on this subject. So I thought, okay, I'm going to put a conference together and I'm going to make every speaker someone from one of the companies that is doing something really, really well in the veteran talent space. And I'm going to invite all these other companies to come to it. And hopefully it's going to be a good knowledge sharing, professional development type of conference. So I was terrified. It's like, I am committing to a hotel and catering and I've got a lot of money that I just signed a contract on. And it's like, by golly, I hope somebody registers for this conference. And it was funny because we ultimately did get, I was surprised. We got like 65 people at the first conference, which was good. And that was maybe like 45 companies, 50 companies, maybe. And once I started publicizing as we got kind of closer to the conference, it's like, here is who is coming to this conference. And all these big name, Fortune 1000 companies were on the list. I started to hear from all the people who had ignored me up to that point, like, oh, this is a real conference. And it's like, oh, it's a real conference. It's always been a real conference. But yes, now perhaps you're taking it a little more seriously. So they did. They showed up to hear what everybody else had to say. And I'm very pleased to, let everyone know that UPS was one of our guest speakers at the conference. And so your boss, Matt, was there talking about your apprenticeship program. And folks, again, had not considered putting apprenticeship programs together, or the white collar companies were like, well, we don't have blue collar jobs. It's like, you don't have to have a blue collar job. You want to do a cybersecurity apprenticeship? You can do a cybersecurity apprenticeship. So it really opened everybody's eyes to the fact that I think a lot of people were surprised, honestly, that people were so forthcoming and willing to share their knowledge and their hard-learned lessons of how they've put various parts of their program together. And people were willing to tell you what the budget was and how you got the lawyers to let you do the thing that you wanted to do. And, what do you mean you don't go to military bases to recruit? No, we use Google ads. We spend half the budget that we used to spend on travel and put it all towards Google ads, and we get 3 times the results. And so people are learning these types of tactics and going back and then changing like how they want to structure their program. And most people will tell me, it's like, you just saved me like 8 months of figuring out what to do to try and get better results, and throw spaghetti at a wall and throw money at vendors who may or may not, deliver the results that I'm looking for. And I got all that out of a 3-day conference. And it's like, well, good. Then that all the intent was met there, that we knowledge shared and made you even more dangerous by coming to this conference. I'm very proud of this event.
Yeah, that's one thing I absolutely love about the veteran talent acquisition space is the thought sharing that goes on. I'm blessed enough to run Vetlanta. We're celebrating our 11th anniversary today. So
Congratulations.
and thanks, and the thought sharing that goes on there. And then I host a bi-monthly huddle with veteran talent acquisition managers or professionals and veteran affairs professionals. And we do this virtual meeting, and it's just amazing. Really the folks that get on there just want to help veterans, and that we know by sharing the information with other companies, that's going to help the veteran community and it's going to help our country. So I love that about the job. So
Mhm.
let's talk about this year's conference. So sorry, the agenda. What's that looking like?
So yeah, we've got, I want to say it's 12 different sessions on this year's agenda. So over the course of 3 days, we're going to cover a lot of great content. So we've got sessions on, where do you get your budget from? Because if you're only getting it from either talent acquisition or diversity, equity, and inclusion, you're running a risk of having your budget cut or eliminated entirely the minute there's a whisper of a recession. So you got to get it from different sources. You got to get the business units to give you some budget, because it's like, for the love of God, the work you're doing is benefiting them. So they should be contributing in many ways to your budget. So how do you do that? And where do you go? And what's the ask? And how do you manage all of that kind of thing? We have folks talking about what are the metrics that we're gathering, and then how are we using those metrics to show ROI for the program? Because as we all know, especially recruiting transitioning military members, when you meet them at their career fair, very few of them are getting out like right now. They might be 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from getting out of the service. So how do you show what your results were for going to, Fort Liberty? It's like, well, who'd you talk to? I talked to, 50 people. It's like, great. How many applied? None, because none of them are getting out in the next, 3 months. It's like, oh, and then why'd you go to Fort Liberty? And so you have to be able to show what your real ROI was for doing that. So we'll have people talking about that. We've got a couple different people talking about SkillBridge from various aspects, from literally how do you build a SkillBridge program from scratch, to how do you use one to develop a kind of a leadership development program, so using it specifically to recruit leaders, and then how do you use it for IT support staff. So there's a lot of different things you can do. Most people think, SkillBridge is easy and you just got to get that agreement and then resumes fall out of the sky and it's easy.
It's complex.
And there's a lot of different ways to do it. So you don't have to go the hiring our heroes route unless you want to. You can do it yourself, but then there's other things you got to follow up on. So we'll have people talk about that. And the best part of the conference is, we have a lot of networking opportunities, a lot of like industry breakout sessions, where now we're not listening to someone on the stage. We're actually just talking to each other. And so that's your opportunity to say, okay, oh my God, I'm sitting at a table full of other manufacturing companies. And I'm going to ask them, where are you finding, you're this technician or you're that technician? And people are going to tell you, and you're going to be like, wow, I never would have thought anybody would have shared the secret sauce of, here are the career fairs I will go to, or I won't use this vendor. I'll use this vendor because I feel like I get better results for that type of talent. And so that's the information that gets shared at the conference. We've got folks talking about their military spouse program. You guys are going to be talking about your apprenticeship program and how that's being built out and kind of your plans for progressing it. We've got folks talking about, how to kind of blend the overall diversity recruitment with university recruitment with the veteran program and come up with a more holistic strategic, strategy on that kind of thing. So those are the ones like off the top of my head that I recall are on the agenda, but all of that is available on the website. So if you go to veteranrecruitingconference.com and click on agenda, you can see every day who's speaking, what they're speaking on, and get some guidance on that part.
Great. Can you cover some of the logistics, where it's at, what the dates are?
So we're very thankful to UPS for being our visionary sponsor and our first ever co-host of this event. So this is, we're all learning as we go along here how this is going to work. But so far, everything's been going great. And so all the sessions will take place at UPS headquarters in Atlanta. And then all the lodging, of course, is at a hotel right down the street at Embassy Suites. So we'll have a shuttle bus run everybody back and forth, actually 2 shuttle buses running people back and forth every day. To make sure that we can get in and out quickly. And then, it's a great location, actually, because it's like people don't even have to get a car. You could literally take the MARTA system from the airport directly to Sandy Springs MARTA station. It's a 5-minute walk, or the hotel will send the shuttle and pick you up. So it's really convenient. So that you can do some cost savings with that. And Embassy Suites does, free breakfast and their reception at night. And so there are ways that you can definitely save on the travel portion. of this event. But again, if we saved you 8 months of figuring out what to do, what's the value of that 8 months of throwing spaghetti at a wall? I promise you, it's way more, than the investment to come to the conference and the travel and logistics.
Yeah, come see me at UPS headquarters. And if you've never been to our headquarters office, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's located in the Sandy Springs, just north of Atlanta. And we're keeping our fingers crossed that the weather's going to be good, because sometimes the weather's really nice and at that time of the year. So great. And you mentioned the website, so that's how people can go register.
Yep, veteranrecruitingconference.com. It's got the agenda, the speakers, the hotel, and all those other kind of logistics type information. Got a little information about the value of a veteran, my company, and what we do, and how this conference sort of fits into the bigger picture of the services that we offer. Because I always like to remind people, we don't have a single veteran for you to hire. There are plenty of vendors out there that have resume databases, staffing, and all that kind of stuff, and they're very, very useful. We teach you how to fish. So it's our job to help you structure the program and build the program correctly so that you are getting the highest ROI and you're getting results quickly, and you're not wasting time, money, and effort doing things that may not be the best thing to do right now, especially if you're just getting started with veteran recruitment.
Well, great. I'm super looking forward to this. I wish it was coming up in a week instead of 6 weeks, but I'm sure you got a lot more work to do.
We have a lot more work to do, so I'm like, no, I need those 6 weeks.
That's awesome. Any closing comments, Lisa?
Again, I'm just, thankful for the opportunity, and I hope people, got a little bit of education on, the transition out of the military into the life of a consultant, whether you're paid by somebody else or you're running your own business. So hopefully that gave you a little insight to that, and a little insight to what we do here at the Value of a Veteran if you're not a veteran, but you are in the talent acquisition space.
Outstanding, Lisa. So I'm going to end this podcast like I end them all. Be safe, be kind, and be remarkable.
Excellent.